Picture this. You're standing on a busy street right in the heart of a major city. You're all bundled up against the freezing winter cold, just kind of minding your own business. When out of nowhere, you hear it. A deep, heavy rumble. Honestly, it sounds exactly like thunder. You look up, not a cloud in the sky. The ground is literally vibrating under your boots, but it's not an earthquake.
You look down the street, and your stomach just drops. Surging straight toward you, violently tearing through the city blocks, is a giant wave. Right in the middle of a major city, nowhere near the ocean, there's a massive wall of liquid just barreling right for you. It completely shatters everything you thought you knew about natural disasters.
But as this thing gets closer, the sheer panic of the situation takes an incredibly bizarre twist. Because this approaching threat, this deadly, unstoppable wave, it wasn't made of water. No way. It was molasses.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a story that honestly sounds like some kind of cinematic fever dream, but I promise you it is 100% true. We're talking about the Great Molasses Flood of 1919. So let's jump right into this totally unbelievable piece of history and see how an impossible wave literally reshaped a city, and as you'll see, our modern world.
To really wrap our heads around how this even happened, we have to ground ourselves in that exact moment in time. It was January 15th, 1919. In Boston's super busy North End. And the contrast here is absolutely crucial. This was just a totally ordinary winter day. You've got horse-drawn carts clattering over the cobblestones, the rumble of the local streetcars, folks in heavy coats rushing off to work, kids playing. Nobody walking those streets had a clue that a disaster was literally seconds away.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the key to this whole bizarre event comes down to one staggering number: 2 million. Looming over this bustling, everyday neighborhood was a gigantic steel storage tank at an industrial facility. And inside that metal giant, pressing relentlessly against its walls, were over 2 million gallons of thick, sticky molasses. To put that into perspective, that's enough to fill about 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools, towering right above a residential area. It's just wild to even think about.
And then, the unthinkable happens. The tank failed. But, it wasn't just some slow, steady leak. Witnesses described this utterly terrifying sequence of sounds. First, this ominous groaning, just metal screaming under all that immense pressure. Then, a sudden, explosive metallic crack that echoed across the entire neighborhood. And then, just silence. This incredibly eerie, split-second pause right before the world just completely broke apart.
All that pent-up pressure unleashed this explosive climax. The steel totally ruptured and a gigantic dark brown wave burst out. We are talking about a 15-foot-high wall of molasses surging through the city streets at terrifying speeds. Just try to picture that for a second. A dark wave rushing between brick buildings, completely swallowing the landscape. It sounds surreal, right? But for the people in its path, it was a sudden, inescapable nightmare.
And this brilliantly illustrates why this specific disaster was so uniquely deadly. Molasses isn't like water, right? It's highly viscous. Having that super thick, sticky consistency, basically somewhere between a solid and a liquid, isn't just some neat science fact. It was the exact reason escaping was almost impossible. If you got caught in this thing, it didn't just wash over you like a typical flood. It literally trapped you.
Let's look at the rapid chaos this actually caused. This wave didn't just casually flow down the street, it slammed into buildings with absolutely devastating force. It overturned heavy, horse-drawn vehicles like they were literally children's toys. It swept people completely off their feet, sucking them right into that sticky, dark mass. Entire wooden structures just collapsed under the sheer weight and momentum of the stuff. The devastation was total. There are even these heartbreaking historical accounts of a horse desperately struggling to move, completely trapped by that extreme viscosity we were just talking about.
I want to slow down the pace for a second here, because beyond the sheer, shocking physics of this event, this was a very real, very sobering human tragedy. 21. That is the number of people who lost their lives on those streets that day. 21 folks who were just going about an ordinary winter morning, instantly taken by a disaster that literally no one could have predicted.
And the toll for sure didn't stop there. More than 150 people were badly injured. Homes and buildings were severely damaged. And for these survivors, the nightmare absolutely didn't end when the wave finally stopped moving. They were left physically hurt, trapped in the freezing Boston cold, and completely surrounded by a landscape that had been rendered totally unrecognizable.
Just look at this stark contrast.
You have an ordinary winter morning with open businesses on one hand, transformed in an instant into this grim, utterly grueling cleanup operation on the other. Molasses covered literally everything. The roads, the buildings, the vehicles, even the rescue workers themselves were entirely covered in this sticky debris. Imagine wearing heavy winter boots and struggling just to lift your foot off the ground. Every single step was a massive physical effort just to navigate the wreckage and search for survivors.
So the city spent weeks, literally weeks, cleaning up the physical mess. But there is this haunting sensory reminder left behind. It's reported that the distinct, sweet smell of molasses lingered in parts of Boston for a really long time. Actually, long after the streets were finally cleared, that dark scent just hung in the air. It served as this constant, inescapable ghost of the tragedy for everyone living there.
So, taking all of this in, the biggest question that remained for the city back then, and really the question we need to pivot to right now, is simply, why? Why on earth did the tank collapse? How could an industrial structure of that sheer magnitude fail so catastrophically right in the middle of a densely populated neighborhood?
Well, the disaster triggered a really vital chain of accountability. The horrifying collapse immediately sparked these massive, sweeping investigations, and these legal proceedings heavily scrutinized the tank's construction and its maintenance. People were suddenly asking, wait, how were things like this allowed to be built so close to where people sleep and work? Ultimately, this intense scrutiny forged a historical push for public safety.
And this right here is exactly why this matters to you and me today. The Great Molasses Flood didn't just fade into history as some freak accident. It became a prime example of the true consequences of industrial negligence. The tragedy served as a massive catalyst, actually pushing companies toward taking real responsibility for public safety. It drew a firm line in the sand, basically saying corporations cannot cut corners when innocent lives are quite literally sitting in the shadow of their operations.
Today, this whole event is remembered as one of the absolute strangest industrial disasters in American history. A deadly, building-crushing wave of molasses? I mean, it sounds like absolute fiction, like a Hollywood special effect, right? But as we've seen today, sometimes history's most unbelievable stories are the ones that are entirely, factually true.
I want to leave you with this final thought to take away from this explainer. When you look around at the safety standards, the building codes, and the regulations that we rely on every single day to keep our cities safe, how many of them were born from disasters that sounded completely impossible right up until the exact moment they happened? Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep questioning the world around you, and never stop exploring the incredible history that built it.